So this is the many feet of snow that we were going to get today. I think it's March 7th, Wednesday, I think.
What?
We're going to go on the other side, south pictures, and put some more words on this there. This is the hills of Yonkers. I don't know if this will do this or not. That's looking up north from the St. Joseph's Nursing Home, located at 127 South Broadway, Yonkers, New York. And this is Richard Hobbs. And I have to, the TV station is on, but I don't want to hear that, but I will. You can hear it probably. And this is St. Joseph's Nursing Home looking south on Broadway. And this is, I think that building has something to do with this nursing home. There's, I guess that's an old bank or maybe Masonic Hall, I don't know. And that's a building. And that's the St. Joseph's Hospital south of here. And that's the, I think if you can see it, that's the McDonald's. And I wanted to take a picture of the snow falling, but I don't know if there's snow falling or not. I don't know if you can see it. But you know, we'll talk about raindrops. You'll never guess, unless you already know it, what a raindrop has to have in order to exist. There's one thing, if you don't have these, you can have raindrops, I believe, or I'm told, or I'm assuming. This is looking south on Broadway, and this is South Yonkers. Well, it's what it is this. You have to have a little piece of dust, a little tiny piece of dirt, light enough that it can float in the air, or aerodynamic so it will float in the air. That's what you need to have. When you run into fog, fog is the little tiny pieces of dust that have water that is in the air, because it's damp, the air is very moist, the humidity is high. So then the water that's floating in the air, as some of it's actually water, but it's not heavy enough to fall. It's light enough to still stay in the air, and that's moisture, or it could be in the form of gas, this water, like steam. See, steam is water floating up in the air in little gaseous molecules or droplets or particles. And when what makes a cloud or what makes a fog is, you know, when I was a little boy, I used to lay in my grandmother's house in the front of the house near the windows. I lay down on the floor, and the sunlight certain times would shine through the window. It was the morning. And I would look up into the sunlight inside the room, and I could see these little tiny pieces of dust floating in the air, particles. It was very interesting. You've seen it if you ever did that or something like it. Now you only can see things like that, particles, when light hits them and reflects back. If the light doesn't reflect back, then you can't see something. Everything that you see it because light hits it, and the light reflects back, and then it comes into your eye. And your eye has things in it that can translate this light, which is actually, they're waves and they're particles. They're particles and they're waves, both. Energy is a wave, and things are particles. But we've come to learn pretty well that light is both particle and wave, or at least it represents itself as being each, depending how you test it. So, but in order for a raindrop to exist, you have to have dust in the air, and dirt and sand, or some kind of little particles of something solid. And when the water collects around that, if a little water collects around it, it won't fall. It'll lay in the air, and that's where you get fog or clouds. It's floating in the air. And then temperature has something to do with it, because heat goes up and cold goes down. So if a particle of this fog or this cloud, if it's hot enough, it'll stay up high. It gets a little colder, it might fall. And sometimes it might be another way. And then air, depend where you are. Down here, the air could be 30 degrees. But up higher, before you get to the sky, it could be 20 degrees. Or it could be 80 degrees down here and 30 degrees up there. There can be levels of air as you go up to space. And generally it gets colder the higher you get. But if there's hot air blowing up there and it's not blowing down here, then up there it's going to be warmer than here. Or it could be the other way around. And people know a lot of stuff, but we got to have understanding as well as knowledge. And then you got to be able to think for yourself. That's where we get our geniuses, because they thought for themselves and they looked at things differently than everyone else did. And then they noticed something that nobody else noticed, and they said it. And then everyone says, oh, that's crazy, that's wrong, and they criticized, they hated him. They did that to Einstein when he said something that all the scientists thought was crazy. And of course, the news media, they're stupid. They're so stupid. All they will do is tell you what the most popular scientists say and what the most popular people say. And if they don't like what the popular people say, they won't say it. They'll lie. They won't lie, but they do lie. They'll say it. They'll make sure it's said in a way that makes the people who are saying it look good instead of bad. And if they don't like someone, then they'll talk about them in a way that makes them look bad, even if they do something good. This Trump is a good example. There's many things he's done that are very good, and if Hillary Clinton were doing them, they would be the most wonderful things in the world. But because Mr. Trump is doing them, and they don't like Mr. Trump because he's not a fool like we are, that we listen to what people tell us and we don't think about it for ourselves. And we go to everyone, we want to be popular. We want to go along with everyone else, and especially if everyone else likes what we like. But that's not science, and that's not good science, and it's bad politics. Because if a lot of persons, if 51% of the persons want to be that it's okay for a man to have sex with a child or with somebody he's not married to, then the law can say that it's legal. Do you understand that? And the law can say, and the law can do like it happens in some places like Iran and some other Arab and Muslim countries, where the law says this is wrong to do. That's what we say, but then it's okay to do it, and people do it all the time, and then the government doesn't enforce the law. See, and we did that here. Obama did that with this DACA business, because what he basically did is say, it's okay for all these people to break the law and to continue breaking the law, and we're not going to enforce the law. And this is a tendency for Democrats to do. They have laws, and then they don't enforce them. And then eventually they change the laws so that they're no longer laws, because the people want to do them. And sometimes it isn't good to say something's legal because people want to do it. But in a democracy, if 51% of the persons say it's true, that vote, then it's okay. But that doesn't mean it's right. You see? And if 51% of them say you can't do it, then you can't do it, but that doesn't mean it's wrong. And then you have a real problem. And you have a problem. Whenever 51 people can tell 49 persons what they must do, and if they don't do it, they can be put in jail. Or what they can't do, and if they do it, they can be put in jail. But then it depends what it is. And as you get dictatorships and places where power is being ruled by persons who are using it to advantage themselves, you have these kind of irrational, unreasonable rules. But going back to the weather, every raindrop on the earth exists because there's a little piece of dust or a little piece of a grain of dirt or anything, and the water collects around it while it's floating in the air, up high, down low, wherever it floats, and then it gets heavy enough, it drops. It becomes a raindrop. And if the temperature is the right temperature, it can become a snowflake. It will become a snowflake, depending the temperature. And if you pay really close attention to the weather, which I have, but only for about 180 years I've paid attention to it. because I've noticed that sometimes if it's 33 or 34 degrees, 32 degrees is freezing. And sometimes it can be 31 or 30 below 32, and it doesn't snow because of the temperature. And then other times, oftentimes it can snow when it's about 34 or 33. But that has to do with the levels of air and where it's high and where it's low, where it's cold, where it's warm, and how particles of water that are condensed around on a piece of dust or a piece of dirt, what the dynamics of what makes that fall. And then you get hail and sleet and all these other things. There's more aspects to it. There's been times when frogs have fallen out of the sky. There is. And there's explanations for how that went about happening, but it can rain cats and, well, it pretty much probably can't rain a cat and a dog, but it could actually rain cats and dogs. A tornado could pick cats and dogs up at a dog pound, a cat pound, and throw them up in the air and carry them 100 miles, and the tornado can die out, and then the cats and dogs will fall out of the sky. So, but now look, rain is caused by a piece of dust that has water around it. Snowflakes is caused by that dust having gotten, that particle having frozen. And there's 6 different types of snowflakes, 6 different basic shapes that a snowflake can fall into. Apparently, maybe because there's 6 different types of dust, and depending how the water collects around it and how it freezes, it will get supersaturated, it'll freeze, and it'll create one of 6 different types of crystalline structures. But that's about the weather. And people say they can't tell the weather, but I can always tell you exactly what will happen in the weather. And I can tell you what will happen in the stock market. And I can tell you what will happen exactly correct whenever there's a political party that's based on democracy, which we think is wonderful, but it isn't, in my opinion, but you have your opinion. Because in a democracy, 51 people can say that 49 people should be put to death simply for existing. And if that's the law, then that can be. And to prevent that from happening, when the United States was formed, we developed a system that tried to not let that happen. Because a democracy can be just as much of a dictatorship as a dictatorship. And dictatorships can seem like democracies because the dictators can go around and find out what the popular opinion is and make that the law, or talk about it. But what a stupid country we are to let people who are actors and actresses tell us what we should think and believe about our politics or our religion or life. And how stupid, much more stupid we are to let newscasters tell us what's right and what's wrong and what's good or bad. Don't listen to newscasters, because they're stupid. If they weren't stupid, they wouldn't report the news the way they do. And if they're not stupid, they're part of a stupid system that doesn't have your best interest at heart. It has their best interest at heart or some other interest. And these things can all be manipulated. The stock market, the weather can be manipulated. I know how, but I'll tell you this. You can predict the stock market and the weather and politics. Very simple. It's very simple. They fluctuate. It fluctuates. It'll be one way sometime, it'll be another way another time, and depending on a lot of different little things, it might be different in 10 minutes than it is now. Same thing happens with your blood pressure, by the way. But you know, the truth is that every hurricane that we ever had in the United States is caused by dust particles, sand particles that blow off the Sahara Desert at a certain time of the year, and then they get into the atmosphere above the Atlantic Ocean, and then the heating and cooling of water in the air creates these hurricanes. And we've known that for ages. So we could build a huge 5,000 foot wall at the end of Africa, Sahara Desert. We probably wouldn't have any more hurricanes. Because sometimes building a wall is a good thing. Now, all these people are against the walls that Trump wants to put a wall up. All these stupid politicians, stupid newscasters will make you think it's stupid. But let me ask you a question. Do you have a door in your house? And do you have a lock on the door? And these terrorists, these kids going into a school and killing other kids, how come the door isn't locked? How come they're allowed in? Why did they let them in the school? Well, they did let them in the school. They didn't keep them out. Well, you know, a wall in the school would fix the problem. And what's a wall? That's something that the person who wants to get in someplace who isn't supposed to be there can't go past it. And I'll tell you why the Democrats are against the wall from Mexico. Well, I don't tell you why, then I get sued. But if you're not stupid, you can figure it out. Especially if you understand that maybe some Democrats think that smoking pot is a good idea and we should eventually become progressive and good by no longer having that illegal. And there is a huge thing going on in our country that people who want everyone to be able to smoke pot, and that it would be good. And now they're telling us that smoking pot is good for our health. Andrew Cuomo got elected as the governor of New York because he said he'll make smoking pot legal. Oh, come on. Smoking cigarettes is harmful. It took us 300 years to figure that out because of the huge interest in having slaves in the South. So they have tobacco and they charge it and you buy it and it kills you. But it's safe, it's legal. You have a right to have it. And we don't want pot in this country because I don't want to sit up get on a bus or on a plane and have the bus driver smokes pot. I don't want that society. But the Democrats want that society. They like to fly on a plane where the pilot, maybe in the last 2 weeks, was smoking pot, and maybe not. Who knows? Who cares? It's absurd. The whole democratic idea is absurd. They want to let these Mexicans and anyone else come in this country, so they'll vote for Democrats because they're going to want pot and they're going to want rules that you don't enforce, which is what you have in Mexico and South America. Rules that don't get enforced, either because you can enforce them or because you don't want to enforce them. And the Republicans would like you to change the rules. If you don't like the rules, be open and honest about it and say the rules that you like and make those the rules. But the fact is that a lot of times to do that doesn't make any sense. You have to realize that your idea is wrong. So, what are we going to do? Well, Mr. Trump's doing a lot of good things. I know how to tell the weather and the stock market and politics. They fluctuate in a democracy. And you have to decide whether you want to have a good country where good things happen for many persons. And no, you can't make America great again, because so far America's never been great. But it could become great. It was on its way to being great many, many times. And then the Democratic Party, people who are Democrats today and their ancestors, stopped it. They stopped it. They stopped it by having it okay to do something that was wrong, either by making it legal or saying it's legal, and because you agree, then you go along with that. And it's wrong. It's evil. And America will never be great unless we think for ourselves and do what's right. Thank you.